The rain was falling gently but steadily over Los Angeles that evening. Soft streaks of water running down windshields and pooling quietly on the cracked pavement of an almost empty parking lot. The sky hung heavy and gray, and everything felt strangely still, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Keanu Reeves sat quietly behind the wheel of his car, staring at a battered old sedan parked in a shadowy corner under a flickering street lamp. There was something about that car, its dented frame, its sagging tires, and its fogged-up windows, that pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain. He couldn't seem to look away. It wasn't just the appearance of the car itself, but the feeling that radiated from it, loneliness, exhaustion, and maybe even sorrow. Keanu had come to this grocery store parking lot for something ordinary. He had planned to pick up a few groceries, take a quiet walk in the rain, and disappear back into the background of the city where he had always felt most comfortable, unrecognized and alone, free from the noise and attention of fame. But tonight, fate had quietly placed something in his path that refused to be ignored. His gaze was fixed on that car when he noticed a shadow shift inside. Someone was there. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his heartbeat quickening for reasons he didn't fully understand yet. It was late, and most people had already gone home to warmth and comfort, but whoever was inside that car was still here, waiting, existing in silence. Without really thinking, Keanu stepped out into the rain. It dripped from the brim of his hood and soaked through his worn jacket almost immediately, but he didn't care. Each step toward that car felt heavier than the last. With every footfall, a strange sense of familiarity crept over him, as if he was approaching something from his own past, but didn't quite know it yet. He reached the driver's side window and peered in through the fogged glass. At first, the interior was just a blur of shadows, piles of clothing, empty cups and scattered belongings. Then, as his eyes adjusted, he saw a figure slumped low in the driver's seat, bundled beneath an old blanket. The man inside slowly lifted his head as if pulled by some invisible thread, and the dim light caught his face. Keanu froze, his breath hitched in his throat. The man in that car was Jack. Jack, his former stunt double. The man who had once leapt from rooftops and crashed cars for him. The man who had made danger look like ballet, who had laughed through pain and risked everything to make sure Keanu looked like a hero on screen. Jack had been his shadow on film sets, his safety net, and in many ways, his brother. But Jack had vanished from his life nearly 15 years ago, and Keanu had assumed he had simply moved on, retired maybe, or started a quiet life somewhere far away. But now here he was, sitting alone in a rusting sedan in the corner of a parking lot, looking thinner, older, and worn by something far heavier than time. For a long moment, neither man moved. Jack's eyes widened in shock, and then his gaze dropped quickly, as if ashamed to be seen. His shoulders hunched lower under the blanket. Keanu felt his heart break a little. He tapped gently on the window and spoke, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "Hey, Jack, is that you?" Jack hesitated, then reached across and slowly cracked the window open, just enough for his voice to slip out. His words were hoarse, almost fragile. "Keanu, what are you doing here?" Keanu crouched beside the car, ignoring the rain soaking through his jeans, and lowered himself so their eyes could meet properly. "I could ask you the same thing," he said gently, but Jack didn't meet his gaze. Instead, he turned away slightly, his face tightening with embarrassment. "You don't want to know," he muttered under his breath. Keanu felt something deep and old stir inside him, a mix of guilt, sadness, and the weight of all those years they had lost. He sat down right there on the wet pavement, resting his elbows on his knees and pulling his jacket tighter around himself. "I do want to know," he said quietly but firmly. "I have time, Jack." There was a long pause. Jack's hands fidgeted nervously in his lap, and he seemed to struggle with himself. Then, finally, his shoulders sagged in surrender, and he leaned back in the seat. After that last movie we did together, the one with the rooftop chase. You remember that one, right? He asked without looking at Keanu. Keanu nodded silently, memories flashing through his mind. He remembered that rooftop chase. He remembered Jack assuring everyone he was fine after a hard landing. He remembered how Jack limped away afterward, laughing and waving off concern. I took a bad fall during that shoot, Jack continued. Much worse than I let on. My leg, it never healed properly. I thought I could come back. I tried. I kept trying, but every job got harder. Every stunt became a risk I couldn't manage anymore. The calls stopped coming. People moved on. I just disappeared. His voice cracked on the last word. Keanu felt a sharp pang of guilt twist in his chest. How had he not noticed? How had he let so much time pass without checking on this man who had once put his life on the line for him? Jack kept speaking, his words tumbling out now as if a dam had broken. The medical bills piled up fast. I sold my house just to stay afloat. Rented a place for a while, but then that money ran out too. Moved into cheaper places, then none at all, and then this car became home. He gave a bitter chuckle, but there was no humor in it. 2 years now, this is where I sleep. This is where I live. Keanu sat in silence, letting Jack's words sink deep. He felt ashamed for having lost touch, for having assumed Jack was fine just because he had smiled back then. Jack had always smiled, even through pain. Especially through pain. Why didn't you reach out, Jack? Keanu asked gently. You know I would have helped. Jack shrugged, his eyes still downcast. I couldn't do that, man. You, big star, busy life. I didn't want to be a burden. Didn't want pity. Keanu shook his head slowly. You were never a burden, Jack. You're my friend. Those words hung between them, soft but powerful. And Jack finally looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time that night, Keanu took a breath and spoke carefully. Will you come with me tonight? No pressure, no promises, just dinner, a meal, 2 friends catching up. Jack hesitated, torn between pride and weariness. The rain was still falling, making soft tapping sounds all around them, almost like a gentle drumbeat marking the weight of the moment. After a long silence, Jack gave a small, almost invisible nod. Okay, he whispered. Keanu stood slowly and opened the passenger door of his own car, motioning for Jack to join him. As Jack stepped out of his sedan, Keanu noticed the limp right away, subtle but unmistakable. Jack was trying to stand tall, to walk without showing weakness, but every step told the story his face tried to hide. Keanu said nothing, simply matching his pace as they walked side by side. Before getting in, Jack turned back to glance at his old car, his sad little shelter, with a mix of regret and attachment. Keanu touched his shoulder gently and said, Don't worry. We'll come back for it later. Jack gave a faint smile, the first real one Keanu had seen from him in years, and lowered himself into the seat. As they drove out of that lonely parking lot and into the quiet streets of the city, Keanu kept glancing at Jack from the corner of his eye, his mind already racing with thoughts. But one thought rose above all others and settled in his heart. He would not let Jack face the struggle alone anymore. Whatever it took, no matter how long, Keanu would help Jack rebuild his life. The journey had just begun. The restaurant they chose was small, quiet, and tucked away from the busy streets. Just the kind of place where 2 old friends could sit and talk without drawing attention. Keanu chose it carefully, wanting Jack to feel comfortable, to feel human again after so long hiding in shadows. They sat at a corner table, warm light casting soft shadows on the wooden walls, a gentle jazz melody playing low in the background. Jack sat stiffly at first, his hands wrapped tightly around the warm cup of coffee in front of him, as if holding onto it was the only thing keeping him steady. His clothes, worn and layered, seemed out of place here, but Keanu didn't care. All he saw was the man who had once saved him over and over again. A man who had risked everything for him without hesitation. Keanu spoke softly, trying to break through Jack's guarded silence. You remember that motorcycle chase we did in Chicago? He asked, a small smile playing at his lips. Jack looked up, his expression softening as a distant memory flickered in his eyes. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I remember. You were terrified. Keanu laughed gently. I was. You kept telling me to relax, that you'd make me look like a pro. And you did. For the first time that night, Jack chuckled quietly, the sound rusty but real. That was one of my favorite shoots, he admitted. You trusted me. Most actors didn't even talk to their stunt doubles. But you always treated me like part of the team. Those words sat heavy between them, filled with meaning. Keanu had always felt that trust, not just on set but beyond it too. Jack had been more than a stunt double. He had been a friend, a protector, someone who made the impossible seem easy. Keanu leaned back in his chair, memories flooding his mind. Do you remember the fall from the bridge on that action film? He asked. You told me it was safe, but I could see the look in your eyes. You were nervous too. Jack smiled faintly. It wasn't exactly safe, but it had to look good on camera. That was the job. You were counting on me. I couldn't fail. Keanu's smile faded a little as he looked at Jack now, the man who had given everything to that job and had ended up here, sitting in a borrowed jacket, living out of a car. Jack's eyes grew distant again as he stirred his coffee absently. I love the work, Keanu, he said softly. The rush, the adrenaline, the way we worked together. But after that rooftop accident, everything changed. The doctor said I could heal, but they didn't tell me how much time it would take. And Hollywood doesn't wait. Keanu listened, saying nothing, allowing Jack the space to speak his truth at last. Jack single quotes. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. The calls stopped. Directors I thought were friends stopped returning my messages. And when the money ran out, well, I learned quickly that the world forgets stuntmen. Those words cut deep, filled with quiet bitterness and pain. Jack had once been fearless, jumping off buildings, crashing cars, setting himself on fire, all to make the audience cheer. But when he could no longer perform, the world had simply moved on without him. Keanu felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He remembered the applause at premieres, the glowing reviews, the awards, all moments that had been built on Jack's silent sacrifices. He leaned forward and said carefully, You didn't deserve that, Jack. Not from them, not from anyone. Jack looked away, staring into his coffee as if trying to find answers in its dark surface. It's just how it goes, he muttered. No one thinks about the people behind the scenes. Keanu reached across the table and placed his hand gently over Jack's. I thought about you. I still do. For a moment, Jack didn't respond. Then, his shoulders trembled slightly, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears. It's hard. Man, he said. You spend your whole life being useful, being strong, taking hits for other people. And then suddenly, you're not needed anymore. It's like you don't even exist. Keanu squeezed Jack's hand gently, his own heart aching with guilt. You exist to me, he said quietly. You always have. Jack took a shaky breath, as if those simple words were heavier than they seemed. The waiter brought their meals, but neither man touched their food right away. Instead, they sat in quiet reflection, surrounded by the memories of years gone by, the danger, the laughter, the shared trust that had once defined their lives. Jack finally broke the silence. You know, I was proud of my work, he said. I didn't care about fame or money. I just wanted to make sure you were safe, to make sure you looked good on camera. Keanu felt a lump rise in his throat. Jack's humility was almost too much to bear. You did more than that, Jack, he whispered. You saved me, every single time. Jack gave a tired smile. It was my job. Keanu shook his head. It was more than a job. It was loyalty. It was friendship. Those words seemed to settle something inside Jack. His shoulders relaxed. Just a little, and for the first time that night, he met Keanu's gaze fully. No shame. No embarrassment, just quiet gratitude. Keanu knew that Jack's pride had kept him from reaching out all these years. And he knew that Jack was still struggling, still carrying the weight of feeling forgotten. But tonight was the beginning of something different. Tonight, Keanu would show Jack that he wasn't forgotten, not by him, and not by the world. Ends. They sat there, sharing memories and unspoken pain. A bond was slowly being repaired. Piece by piece, word by word, Keanu was building a bridge back to the man who had once risked everything for him. And deep down, Jack could feel it too, that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for him to find his place in the world again. The night wore on, but neither man noticed the time. All that mattered was this moment, two friends reconnecting, remembering, healing. The next morning, Keanu woke early, his mind still heavy with thoughts of Jack. Sleep had not come easily the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jack's face, the sadness in his eyes, the way he carried alone for so many years. That face had stayed with him through the night, stirring something deep inside him that Keanu could not ignore. Keanu was not the kind of man to simply feel sorry and move on. He believed in action, in doing something meaningful when people needed it most. And right now, Jack needed help, real help, not just a warm meal or a kind word, but something that could truly change his situation. But he also knew this wouldn't be easy. Jack was proud, fiercely proud. He had survived 2 years in that car without asking for help from anyone. His pride was the only thing that had kept him going, even when the world had seemed to forget him. Keanu understood this too well. He had seen that same pride on set all those years ago. Jack standing tall, brushing off injuries, laughing in the face of danger, refusing to show weakness even when he was hurting inside. Now that same pride might be the thing standing in the way of accepting the help he needed. Keanu spent hours that morning making quiet phone calls, speaking to people he trusted, people who could help discreetly. He didn't want to embarrass Jack. He didn't want any attention or cameras or headlines. This wasn't about charity or fame. This was about loyalty and debt. A debt Keanu felt he owed deeply. By afternoon, he had a plan. He drove to the small motel where Jack was staying temporarily, a room Keanu had quietly paid for after their dinner the night before. When he arrived, Jack was sitting outside, sipping weak coffee from a paper cup, staring into the distance with a look that spoke of exhaustion deeper than any physical tiredness. Keanu approached gently, sitting beside him on the bench. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, keeping his tone light. Jack gave a half smile but didn't meet his eyes. "Better than in the car," he said quietly. "Thanks for this, but I can't stay long. I need to get back to the warehouse tomorrow. That job's all I have right now." Keanu nodded slowly, respecting Jack's honesty, but feeling a surge of sadness at those words. The warehouse job paid almost nothing, he knew. It was hard labor for someone still limping from an old injury, a daily grind that barely kept. Jack fed. "Jack," Keanu began carefully, "I want to talk to you about something." Jack stiffened slightly. "Keanu, if this is about money, I appreciate it, but..." Keanu gently raised a hand to stop him. "Hear me out," he said. "This isn't about pity. This is about respect. You gave me so much over the years, your skill, your loyalty, your protection. I'm here now because I respect you, not because I feel sorry for you." Those words seemed to soften something in Jack's expression, but he still hesitated. Keanu continued, choosing his words with care. "I've spoken to some friends. They run a small stunt school, a place where young stunt performers train safely. They need someone like you, someone who knows the craft, who can teach, who understands what it means to take care of actors and make stunts look real. I told them about you, and they want to meet you." Jack looked down at his coffee, his fingers tightening around the cup. "Keanu, I can't. I'm out of shape. My leg's bad. I haven't worked in years. I'm nobody now." Keanu shook his head firmly. "You're Jack. The man who taught me how to look fearless when I wasn't. The man who saved me more times than I can count. You have knowledge, Jack. Experience that can't be replaced. Those students need that. They need you." Jack stayed silent for a long time, struggling inside. Keanu could see the conflict in his eyes. Pride battling shame, hope fighting despair. Finally, Jack spoke in a low voice. "Do you really think I could still do that?" Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know you can," he said softly. "They don't need you to jump off buildings anymore, Jack. They just need you to show them how to do it right. How to be safe. How to be brave." Those simple words struck something deep inside Jack, and for the first time since their reunion, Keanu saw a spark return to his old friend's eyes, a glimmer of purpose, faint but real. Jack exhaled slowly. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll meet them. No promises. But I'll meet them." Keanu smiled warmly. "That's all I ask." But deep down, Keanu knew that this was only the first step. Jack's struggle wasn't just about work or money. It was about dignity, self-worth, and believing that he still mattered. Keanu understood that fully now. It would take more than one conversation or one opportunity to heal Jack's spirit. This was a beginning. And beginnings mattered. As they sat there, watching the late afternoon sun break through the clouds for the first time all day, Keanu felt hope rise inside him too. This was what friendship meant. This was what loyalty demanded. He would not let Jack fade away. Not now, not ever. The next few days passed quietly but were filled with an unspoken tension. Jack had agreed to meet the stunt school directors, but something about him felt fragile, like he could change his mind at any moment. Though he stayed at the small motel Keanu had arranged, Jack kept his distance emotionally, often sitting outside alone, nursing lukewarm coffee, staring out at the world but lost in his thoughts. Keanu understood. This wasn't just a job offer to Jack, it was a test. A test of whether he could face the world again after all these years of isolation and struggle. The fear of failure weighed on Jack more than the physical pain of his old injury. Keanu gave him space but stayed close, quietly supporting him without pushing. He brought breakfast every morning, sat with him when he was willing to talk, and simply shared silence when Jack wasn't ready to speak. There was no rush, no pressure, only presence. But on the fourth morning, Jack surprised Keanu. "I'm not sure I can go through with this," Jack said quietly as they sat side by side outside the motel. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the deep uncertainty within. "What if I go there and they look at me? And all they see is a broken man? What if I can't keep up? What if I let everyone down again?" Keanu took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully. "Jack, you're not broken. You've been through a lot, more than most people could ever handle, and you're still here. That matters. And you can't let anyone down by showing up and sharing what you know. They need your experience, not your perfection." Jack looked away, shaking his head. "I'm not used to being seen like this. I was always the tough one. The one who could take the hit, laugh it off. Now I'm the guy who limps and struggles to get out of bed." Keanu felt a deep ache in his chest as he listened. This was pride talking, but beneath it was raw pain. The pain of a man who had been strong all his life and didn't know how to ask for help or accept kindness. So Keanu made a decision. He knew Jack would never ask for help directly, but maybe, just maybe, he could show Jack that accepting help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of trust, a sign of friendship. Later that day, Keanu called a few close friends, people Jack had worked with before, old stunt coordinators, and actors who still remembered Jack fondly. He told them about Jack's situation, not to spread gossip or pity, but to ask them to help rebuild Jack's sense of worth. Keanu arranged a quiet gathering at a small warehouse where the stunt school held its weekend workshops. He didn't tell Jack the full plan. He simply invited him to come along, saying there was a chance to meet some young stunt students and talk about the craft they both loved. Jack hesitated, of course. He paced the motel room, adjusting his old jacket, running his fingers through his graying hair, looking at himself in the mirror with doubt and uncertainty. But in the end, he agreed. Something in Keanu's gentle persistence seemed to reach him. When they arrived at the warehouse, Jack was stunned. Waiting inside were not just young stunt students, but a handful of veterans too, men and women Jack had worked with years ago, faces he hadn't seen in over a decade. They greeted him warmly, clapped him on the back, and treated him like an honored guest. Not a forgotten man. It was overwhelming at first. Jack stood frozen for a moment, unsure how to react. But then one of the younger students stepped forward and said quietly, "We've heard about you, Jack. Your work. It's legendary. We're honored you're here." Those simple words broke through Jack's hesitation. His face softened, his shoulders relaxed just a little, and he nodded, a shy smile creeping onto his lips. As the afternoon went on, Jack found himself speaking more and more. He talked about how to fall safely, how to read a stunt script, how to work with actors to make dangerous scenes look real. The young students listened intently, hanging on his every word. And slowly, without even realizing it, Jack's confidence returned. Keanu watched from a distance, his heart full but quiet. He knew this was Jack's moment, a moment Jack needed to reclaim a part of himself he thought was lost forever. Later, as they left the warehouse together, Jack was quiet again. But in a different way this time. There was no sadness or shame in his silence, only reflection. Finally, as they reached Keanu's car, Jack spoke in a soft but steady voice. "Thank you," he said simply, "for all of this. I didn't know anyone still remembered me." Keanu turned to him, his own voice gentle and full of warmth. "You're not forgotten, Jack. You never were. And you never will be, not while I'm around." Jack gave a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "You know, Keanu, you've done more for me in these few days than I could ever repay." Keanu smiled. "You don't have to repay anything. This is what friends do." Those words hung gently in the evening air as they drove back to the motel. There was still a long road ahead for Jack, but tonight felt like a turning point, a quiet but powerful reminder that no one is ever truly forgotten as long as someone cares enough to remember. Ending line. The following week unfolded quietly. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Jack was different now. Each day he rose a little earlier, walked a little straighter, and spoke with a touch more confidence than before. His visits to the stunt school had become regular, and the young students gravitated toward him, eager to learn from a man who carried the weight of so many hard-earned lessons. But despite these visible signs of progress, Keanu could sense there was still a shadow hanging over Jack. Something unresolved lingered deep inside him, something unspoken that kept him guarded, even as he smiled and laughed again. Keanu didn't press. He knew that the hardest wounds were not physical, but emotional, the scars of feeling forgotten. The ache of falling from a life built on strength and skill into one marked by struggle and invisibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast a warm golden light over the city, Keanu invited Jack to join him at a quiet park where they could sit and talk in peace. They found a bench beneath a large tree, far from the noise of traffic and people. The air was cool and smelled faintly of jasmine, and for a long while they simply sat in companionable silence. Finally, Keanu spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "Jack, can I ask you something honest?" Jack turned to him, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Sure, he said. Keanu hesitated, choosing his words carefully. What was the hardest part of all this? Was it the injury? The money? Losing? Work? Or was it something else? Jack was silent at first. He stared down at his hands, rough and weathered from years of stunts and more recent hard labor, his fingers curling slightly as if holding an invisible weight. Then he spoke, his voice soft but carrying a depth of emotion that made Keanu sit still and listen carefully. It wasn't the injury, Jack admitted slowly. It wasn't even the money or the work, not really. He looked up, his gaze meeting Keanu's fully for the first time in days. It was feeling invisible, Keanu. Like I didn't matter anymore, like the world had moved on and left me behind. I was used to being the guy who made things happen behind the scenes. No fame, no spotlight, but I knew I mattered. And then, suddenly, I didn't. His voice cracked slightly, and he quickly looked away, blinking hard against the tears that threatened to rise. Keanu felt that ache deep in his chest again. Not just sympathy but understanding. You were never invisible to me, he said. Gently. Jack gave a small, sad smile. Maybe not to you, but to everyone else? I felt like a ghost, man. Sitting in that car every night, watching people walk past me without even seeing me. That was the hardest part. It made me wonder if I ever really existed at all. Those words hit Keanu harder than he expected. He had known Jack was struggling, but hearing the raw truth of his loneliness and despair cut deeper than he imagined. He turned fully toward Jack, his voice steady and full of quiet conviction. You did exist, Jack. You still do. And you matter, not because of what you did, for me or for Hollywood, but because of who you are. You have worth even without the stunts, even without the jobs or the applause. Jack swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. You don't know how many nights I sat in that car, telling myself I was worthless, he whispered. You don't know how many mornings I wondered if it was even worth waking up again. Keanu felt his heart break completely in that moment. He reached out and placed a firm but gentle hand on Jack's shoulder, grounding him, holding him steady. I'm so sorry, Keanu said quietly. I should have been there. I should have seen the signs. I should have reached out sooner. Jack shook his head, his voice hoarse but resolute. This isn't your fault. Life just happened. I disappeared because I thought I had no place anymore. I didn't think anyone would care. Keanu tightened his grip gently. I care, Jack, I always did. I just didn't know how to show it, until now. Those simple, heartfelt words unlocked something deep inside Jack. His defenses finally crumbled, and he let the tears fall freely. For the first time, silent but powerful, carrying the weight of years of pain, isolation, and self-doubt. Keanu stayed beside him, saying nothing more, just offering quiet presence and a steady shoulder to lean on. In that vulnerable moment, Jack finally understood that accepting kindness didn't make him weak, it made him human. He realized that friendship was not about pride or appearances, but about being seen, truly seen, even in the darkest moments. As the evening light softened and the first stars appeared overhead, Jack wiped his face and took a deep, steadying breath. Thank you, Keanu, he said softly. For everything, for not giving up on me. Keanu smiled gently. I never would, Jack, I promise. The two men sat together in the growing darkness, their friendship stronger than ever, a bond reforged not just by memories of the past, but by the healing power of empathy, loyalty, and respect. And in Jack's heart, a quiet but profound transformation had begun. He was no longer invisible. He mattered to Keanu, to the students at the stunt school, and soon, to himself. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Jack had expected. Every day he returned to the stunt school, and every day the young students gathered around him, eager for his guidance, hanging on his every word. Jack taught them not only the techniques of falls, rolls, and fight choreography, but also the mindset behind the craft, how to respect danger, how to protect their colleagues, and how to always honor the invisible work that made others shine. But beneath all of this, something more important was happening. Jack himself was changing. The man who had once felt invisible was becoming present again, visible, valued, and respected not for the stunts he could perform, but for the wisdom he could pass on. There was dignity in that. There was healing. Keanu watched quietly from a distance most days, visiting the school from time to time, but always letting Jack take the spotlight now. This wasn't about Keanu rescuing Jack, it was about Jack rediscovering his own worth and taking back control of his life. Still, Keanu knew there was one more thing he needed to do. For years, Keanu had attended film festivals, industry panels, and talk shows where he was often praised for his performances in action films. But not once had Jack's name been spoken in public. Not once had anyone outside their small circle acknowledged the sacrifices Jack had made to make those performances possible. That needed to change. Quietly, without telling Jack, Keanu arranged something special, a tribute at an industry event that would honor stunt performers and recognize the incredible contribution of those who worked in the shadows so others could stand in the light. It was time to give credit where credit was long overdue. The night of the event, Keanu invited Jack to attend as his guest. Jack resisted at first, uncomfortable with the idea of being part of a high-profile evening, but Keanu assured him it would just be a simple gathering, nothing formal. When they arrived, Jack was stunned. The entire theme of the evening was dedicated to stunt performers, their courage, skill, and selflessness. Photographs and video clips played on giant screens, showing decades of breathtaking stunts from films everyone knew and loved. And there, among them, were clips of Jack himself, leaping from rooftops, dodging explosions, crashing through windows, all scenes he had performed years ago for Keanu's films. Jack froze as he watched his younger self on screen. The audience clapping and cheering in appreciation. His eyes glistened as he realized that for the first time, his work was being publicly recognized. Then came the moment that truly broke him. Keanu stepped onto the stage, taking the microphone in front of hundreds of people from the industry. Directors, actors, producers, crew, all gathered to celebrate the art of the stunt. He spoke slowly, clearly, and with deep sincerity. "There's someone here tonight who has made my career possible," he began. "Someone who jumped so I didn't have to. Someone who fell so I could rise. Someone who kept me safe, protected me, and made me look fearless when I was anything." But Keanu paused, scanning the crowd until his eyes found Jack, sitting quietly at a table near the front. "His name is Jack," Keanu continued, "and I owe him more than I can ever express. He taught me about bravery, loyalty, and the true meaning of partnership. Tonight, I want the world to know his name, and to honor all those like him, who work without fame, who take risks without applause, and who deserve more respect than we can ever give." The entire room rose in a standing ovation. Jack sat motionless for a moment, stunned, overwhelmed, unable to believe that this moment was real. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he stood, his limp still visible but his shoulders straight, his head high. The applause was deafening. It wasn't just for his stunts, it was for him. For his journey, his resilience, his quiet strength. For surviving when no one was watching. For mattering even when the world had looked away. Jack felt something shift deep inside him. That night, the shame that had weighed him down for years finally lifted. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. He was valued. And he mattered, not just to Keanu but to everyone in that room and beyond. After the event, Jack and Keanu walked outside together into the cool night air, the stars shining above them. Jack turned to Keanu, his voice quiet but steady. "Why did you do all this?" he asked. Keanu smiled gently. "Because you deserved it, Jack. Because you were always the hero behind the hero, and it was time everyone knew." Jack nodded slowly, a soft smile on his lips. I don't know how to. Thank you. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. You already have, he said simply. As they stood there under the stars, two friends bound by years of trust, sacrifice, and loyalty. Jack finally understood that redemption doesn't come from applause or recognition. It comes from being seen, truly seen, and from allowing oneself to be loved and valued. And for the first time in years, Jack no longer felt lost. He felt whole,